How's it going, folks? Tactard Ted. Yes, it is a Wednesday. Wednesday. I believe it's Wednesday, the 8th of June. Yep, the year is flying by. So how's everyone doing? Are you catching the changing narrative? Yes, the narrative is changing. What narrative am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the narrative with Ukraine. Yes, if you remember, day one of the war, all the Russians are going to wipe Ukraine out in 24 hours. And then about 48 hours into it, the Russians aren't doing so hot. The Russians are losing. The Ukrainians are winning. And we got a steady diet of lies and bullshit about how Ukraine was doing so great. And the Ukrainians are so brave. They're so brave. They told a Russian warship to go fuck itself. And then the Russians wiped out those 13 brave defenders of Snake Island. Only they didn't wipe anybody out. They captured every single buddy. And they've already been exchanged back to Ukraine and got medals, just in case you didn't know. Got medals for telling somebody to fuck off and surrendering. Now, that's a pretty easy gig to get a medal, don't you think? I'm sure some of you guys who served in the military, that's a pretty easy gig. That's like national service ribbon, isn't it? You know, active service, the little Rainbow Coalition medal that you used to get. And then we heard the ghost of Kiev, the great ghost of Kiev. The ghost of Kiev turns out to be bullshit. There is no ghost of Kiev. And then we heard about the massive numbers of rapes. Yes, the Russian soldiers are raping everything in sight. And then they massacred a bunch of folks in Bucha, whatever the fuck. It turns out that the lady who was behind the stories that were inundating the press in the West about Russians raping everything in sight and framing the Russians for the Ukrainian artillery that wiped out a bunch of civilians in Bucha, is no longer employed by the Ukrainian government. She was fired. She is history. Yep. Even at some point, the Ukrainian government has to say enough is enough. And it's not that the Ukrainians were embarrassed by what she was putting out. No. Quite the opposite. They loved what she was putting out, but they're pissed off that a lot of folks are getting wise to it. A lot of folks are calling it out. They don't like to be embarrassed by being called out as bullshit artists, and that's what was happening in the Western press. So we move on from the atrocities to, well, you guys, we might just have to give up some territory. Ukraine might have to give up some territory too. You've got Joe Biden this week. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm pretty sure at some time they got to get back to the negotiating table, and they're going to have to give up some property. But I can't tell them what to do. Well, of course you have, Joe. You've told them what to do all this time. This is your war, and everybody that supports it is supporting Joe Biden. Yep, and that even goes for you people who think you're conservative. You are supporting Joe Biden by supporting Ukraine. That's what you're doing. And some of you don't get it, and I'm not even going to go into all that. But I want to know, how is that war working for you? You happy with what you're paying at the pump? Are you? Because you know what? Supply and demand, you know how that works. If you had more oil to choose from, maybe a little bit of Russian oil, prices would go down. But they won't, and they can't. And hey, I thank you. I'm making me drive a little less. I'm not going to sit here and bitch about the gas prices because it's you folks that started it. And I've already bitched at you enough for being useful idiots. So we moved on from that to now we're hearing the Russians aren't winning fast enough. That seems to be the new narrative that's emerging. And why would we say the Russians aren't winning fast enough? Well, very simply, most people have come to the realization, such as I weeks ago, when this is over, we're eventually going to go back to normal. It's like that really, really hard fight with your girlfriend where you call each other all sorts of dirty, nasty things, and then 45 minutes after you've made up, you're in the bedroom and taking care of business, and everything's forgotten, and it's makeup sex and all that happy shit. Well, guess what? That's the way it's probably going to work out with Russia. It always does. I remember 2014 when everything kicked off in Ukraine and the Russians decided to secure their ports, they would make good on the referendum that the Crimeans had taken to separate themselves from Ukraine. And the Russians decided to help them separate themselves, and Ukraine became Russian territory once again, like it was in the 50s before the Soviets redrew that border. So that's what's going to happen, though. It's going to go back to normalized relationships, because after that happened, I found myself working on a Soviet military base in 2017. And things went back to normal. There was still space cooperation. We got space cooperation now. You looked up the ISS? They haven't put a big partition down the hallway. You Russians stay on that side, we're going to stay on this side, and we can't talk to each other. No, the cooperation is still going on. Now you've got Dmitry Rogozin, head of Roscosmos. He's out there beating his drum and rattling his saber about he can do this and he can do that, and now making threatening tones that he might take down Starlink. It'd be interesting. I'd like to see whether they can do it or not, to be honest, just to see whether Starlink can withstand an attack on it from space. These things are interesting to me. I don't wish Elon Musk ill. I don't, but I really kind of want to see if this works and how's it going to work, and just get a little idea of what war in space is going to be like. You're never going to know till somebody actually opens up. And I think everybody's scared to open up on those satellites because the Star Wars nonsense and how war progresses in space might not be up to our expectations. If it was, I'm sure possibly Russia would take that infrastructure down. But I digress. Back to the point. Once all this gets over with, it's going to go back to business as usual. There are going to be cooperation. There's going to be trading. IKEA is going to open back up. Interesting thing about IKEA, folks, IKEA owns the Mega chain, which is a lot of big malls across Russia. The IKEA stores may have closed, but you know what? Mega still functions. And it's one of those partitions that you don't know about. And McDonald's has been sold to a Russian investor who owns a bunch of McDonald's chains. They're going to change the logo. They're going to change the name, but the menu is going to remain the same, so we still get to help out with Russian obesity, causing it. Eat up, boys, Big Macs, all you can eat. But it's going to go back to normal. It's going to go back to normal, and then Joe Biden's not going to have any reason for $8 gas in California. He's not going to have any reason why we can't have this and why we can't have that and why bread's going to be expensive or why your groceries are going to be expensive. No, I'm sure that, everybody's looking forward to everything getting back to normal. There's a problem with that. You people pissed Putin off. You put these sanctions in place to punish the Russians, to make the Russian government suffer. So, when these things have backfired and they're actually dismantling Western economies, they're causing all sorts of grief in other places, why should Putin hurry up? If anything, I would think that would make him want to pump the brakes. And for those people who understand warfare, if you're not in a hurry, you've got time to prep and shape a battlefield. You've got time to work a position over with artillery. And you take your time. You save your people's lives. You prep the ground with artillery and you slowly move forward. And I believe that's what's happening, because we're not hearing about the great horrendous amount of Russian casualties anymore. No, quite the opposite. We're hearing about the horrendous casualties that the Ukrainians are taking. There was one retired general who recently said he suspects that there are over 200,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. 200,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. Now, I don't see a bunch of the pro-Russian folks jumping up and down and putting that number out there and putting it in people's face. But I remember all you big Ukrainian fans when the number got to where everybody was saying they felt that there was about 15,000 dead Russians. All that was just tremendous. That was great news. You know, all you bloated idiots out there are just putting that out there like it's some sort of great milestone. Whereas 200,000 dead Ukrainians is a shame. It really is. It's terrible it's had to come to this. It's terrible that negotiations did not settle this matter. And a lot of you folks don't understand the Ukrainians and the Russians are brothers. The only problem is some of these Ukrainian folks are xenophobic. And they look at nationalism, and nationalism is not a bad thing. But they look at nationalism allows them to be somewhat xenophobic. And all you need to do is their hero, Stepan Bandera, that a lot of these Western Ukrainians worship, was a murderer, a thug, a criminal. He sided with the Nazis. Then later on, he fought against both the Nazis and the Soviets, at the same time getting rid of all the Poles in Western Ukraine. And any Ukrainian, up to about 70,000 of them, who helped defend the Poles, that helped keep him from committing genocide, because that's what he's doing. He's removing the Poles from the area. It is genocide, much as the Ukrainians committed genocide against the ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine from 2014 forward. But we don't want to talk about that genocide. We'll make up bullshit rumors about Russians committing genocide, but we won't acknowledge the real genocide. But everybody's in a hurry for this to get back to normal. And it's not going to get back to normal because Putin's going to let you guys twist in the breeze for a bit. He doesn't have to be in a hurry. It's damaging our economy. It's damaging the EU's economy. We put it in place. We thought it was a good idea. Now we got to live with it. We have to live with it. We're going to have to keep the sanctions in place out of pride. And the Russians are going to sit back and have a good laugh. And I would have a good laugh at all you people that thought you were doing the right thing, other than the fact it affects this country so negatively. And I live here, and I love this country unlike you. And I put this country ahead of Ukraine. I put this country ahead of Taiwan. I put this country ahead of Russia. I put this country ahead of China. And I really don't think you folks do. If you're willing to risk everything in this country over a shithole like Ukraine, that's none of our damn business. You know, let's not forget, why are we involved in Ukraine? We're involved in Ukraine because Slick Willie, Bill Clinton, decided to get us involved to take some of the attention off to his numerous affairs that he was having. And then Barack Hussein Obama, his State Department, had financed a coup in 2014. And that got us where we are today. Now, I really believe that this was all supposed to play out earlier. I'm starting to believe that this war would have happened earlier if Donald Trump had not been elected president. That was part of the plan. Hillary get elected, there'd be a war. Because that's what the Democrats want. They want to weaken Russia. Why do they want to weaken Russia? Well, I'm going to say it. You're not going to believe it. I'm still going to say it because I believe it. The reason the Democrats want to weaken Russia is Russia committed the ultimate sin by proving that communism doesn't work. In 1991, they got rid of communism. Up until that point, there was a love affair with the Democrats in this country and the Soviet Union. They loved the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was wonderful. We could learn so much from the Soviet Union because that's where the Democrats wanted us to go, was full-blown socialism. And the end result of socialism is always communism. That's the way it works. But they flipped the script. They changed the plan. They decided not to go with communism. They decided communism wasn't for them. And that has invoked the wrath of Democrats. No wonder when they wanted to take out Donald Trump, they chose to do it with a narrative that also damned Russia. They got to take out their two biggest enemies in one foul swoop. So anyhow, folks, that's what I got for you for today. Y'all take care.